All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast presented by Newton Scott and Associates and Chick-fil-A. We want to thank them for powering us through the 2025 season. And yes, as you can see, or if you will soon find out, I'm the only voice in the room if you're on Spotify, but on YouTube, it is just me in the room. Our co-host, beloved TigerNet Zenith David Hood, is in New York City with his family. And so it falls onto me to do the solo aftermath. We're about 90 minutes out from Dabo Sweeney speaking in his usual Sunday night teleconference. And I just got back from Boston. Really fun trip. Really want to shout out the TigerNet team. That was an awesome evening on Saturday in Chestnut Hill. Clemson gets it done. Before we get started, though, on the X's and O's, the nitty gritty, I have to shout out the Hannafin family. We had the opportunity to go hang out at their tailgate before the game started on Saturday. And man, just a great group of people. Got to meet Mama Bentancur. She's a big fan of the podcast. Shout out to her as well. Just a really welcoming group of people. They had these shirts, and it was with one side was for Ronan, one side for BC, and that whole environment was just really cool. Obviously, you guys have seen the hat and the stuff in the background. There's no secret that was a really fun trip for me. I get to go back in a few weeks for a Patriots game. They just won, moved to 4-2 on the season. That was great. But so, what did we really learn with this Clemson matchup? It's fascinating because 2 weeks ago, or I guess three, with the start of the open day, Dabo Sweeney, it's a 1-3 football team. It's not a good one. And he said we could still win this season. And so obviously that season takes on a whole new meaning. You're not going to the college football playoff. You have a detrimental loss to Syracuse that continues to get worse with the absence of Steve Angeli. You have what would be considered good losses to LSU and Georgia Tech, but 3 in the ACC with no real quality opponents upcoming. Florida State's lost 3 in a row. Duke looks to be the threat on the schedule. SMU is undefeated in ACC play. We'll get to them here in a bit. But overall, there's not going to be some magical backdoor cover into the ACC championship like last year, where Fran Brown is saying you're welcome on national TV after taking down Miami. So what do you do with this type of new season? Where does this program go? Does it sort of tuck the tail in between the legs and just see what happens, and whatever the result may be, season's already over anyways. But you get an opportunity in a really unique situation against a really bad North Carolina team that is still dealing with a variety of messes, whether that's inside, outside. The whole Belichick saga is really fascinating for its own separate deal, and we've discussed that plenty. But you have a Boston College team that's not dealing with internally. They're not falling apart at what feels like every second there's something going down. Boston College just has a laundry list of injuries. That's a good offense up there in Chestnut Hill, and getting to kind of watch them operate. And I know Sweeney's comments earlier in the week were, man, they're just a few plays away, all shucks, from being 4-1. And that's going to rub people the wrong way just because of how he's used that same characterization for his football team about being a few plays away from this season having a totally different tenor to it. So obviously you watch the tape with Boston College. It's a very Bill O'Brien offense. There's a lot of balance. There's a lot of movement with the quarterback, lots of play action. It looks very similar to what Houston ran. Very obviously watered down to an NFL version, but you can see some similarities in there. So it's a good football team. Obviously, 1-5, you're going to go, good football team, Grayson. What in the world are you talking about? Are you running on 2 hours of sleep? Go to bed. But you see this BC offense operate. And we're going to sort of talk about Tom Allen, sort of watching the game again in the airport this morning. We had a fun experience. Our flight went from 8:05 to 8:40 to 9. It was a whole shenanigan-filled morning where things happen, but shout out to JetBlue. Never flown on JetBlue before. Pretty good stuff. Getting off topic, but anyways, this team faced with a unique opportunity, and we've seen the laundry list of injuries. Boston College, 1-4, they're reeling. Clemson's 2-3, an opportunity to get back to 500 in conference play and on the season as a whole. And so Clemson sort of follows a similar script to the UNC matchup where offensively it wasn't as easy as the North Carolina game where you watch that back and players aren't tackling. It's this maybe it's the stretch of the arm from a DB here or there, or Bentancur's wide open and he makes a nice move by the 10 and strolls in for a touchdown. Wasn't as simple on Saturday and Chestnut Hill. And I really thought this was the next step for that Clemson offense. And obviously, you're going to want to see it against SMU. You're going to want to see it against Florida State. But there's a foundation here. And I really felt like last night, Garrett Riley called a great game. There was a lot of man beaters for Boston College. And so what he tried to do was really attack that space, try to make defenders who, okay, your assignment's Antonio Williams, your assignment's Brian Wesco, really having to make them choose and make split-second decisions that lead to Clemson receivers being wide open and Klubnik making easy throws. But there were still some difficult shots. There's the layups and then there's the three-pointers. And Klubnik hit a couple big three-pointers. Maybe you consider that Wesco deep ball that felt like it was in the air for minutes, not seconds. You may call that a half-court shot, and Wesco makes a great catch, and he's put together quite the season for Clemson. Obviously, you're 3-3, so the conversation isn't going to be as, I think, nationally received. But I think Clemson fans know, man, this is an off-season priority when it comes to re-signing this batch of players in December when the season comes to a close. So overall, I felt offensively, I had 28-13 in our score prediction. I didn't expect it to be this fireworks show in the first half again. I really felt like the competition, and based off of what we've seen when they're not playing North Carolina, is it's been a little difficult. And so you had a little bit of an elevation in competition. Now, granted, how high is that elevated competition? I would maybe put it a tier above North Carolina, but it's not too much separation between the two. Would love to see those two teams play. Just out of pure curiosity with different situations, bad seasons, different situations. A lot of layered throws from Klubnik. I had the one bad pick where he's trying to do too much out of the left side of the pocket, has Randall wide open in the end zone and just puts not enough on the ball, not enough mustard there. But overall, I came away. Sweeney's going to take his foot off the gas in the second half. He always is going to do that. Similar script to Boston or to North Carolina. But the big story is going to be moving forward is the health of Cade Klubnik. And we were watching from the press box. He was in the tent for a long time, fought to come back in. But ultimately, the coaches, they're going to tell him he's done at that point. He's got to get out. So you have a quarterback that's limping. He looked like he was a little bit uncomfortable during this. Is just my personal opinion. Now, Klubnik may say something differently entirely. He just played a full thing of football, 2-game road trip, probably a little exhausted, but had a big wrap around his leg and was limping a little bit, even on the sideline too, before the game had concluded. You could still see that it was aggravating him. So it will be interesting to see, and this is where that ACC availability report really comes in handy. So we're going to see that grade of questionable, probable, and it all centers around, do you trust Christopher Vizina to get it done? Before we get back to this video, we'd like to thank the title sponsor for this podcast, Newton Scott and Associates. This team is headlined by Jeff Scott, former Clemson assistant coach and 2-time national champion, as well as Eric Newton, a longtime local and trusted real estate partner. These two are teaming up to provide a first-class experience for all Clemson fans. Whether you're looking to buy, sell, or build in the upstate area of South Carolina, you can trust Newton Scott and Associates. Choose the same team that Clemson coaches are selecting when they're looking to buy, sell, or build, all the way from Tigertown to Lake Kiowee. For more information, you can find them at newtonscottsc.com or by calling the number 864-722-9062. That's 864-722-9062. Now, let's get back to the video. So I think for Vizina, we've seen him twice now during the season. You'd say 3 times, counting the Troy scramble play where they tried to run him like a QB draw. But overall, the product hasn't been great. But I do want to push back a tad on the performance from Vizina, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the plays are really watered down. It's incredibly vanilla, and Clemson's just trying to get out of Dodge and trying to be as, I think, safe as possible. Now, they had the 4th down goal line throw, and Klubnik was talking to us about it afterwards, saying You never want to have the ball in your hands in that situation. So you're going to lob it up and see if somebody can come down with it. Boston College is the one who does. So I would be curious to see what this offense looks like with Vizina getting the keys to the car. He's got his driver's license finally. Let's see how he does without a parent in the right seat, looking right at him. I got the brake right there, holding on for dear life on the handrail up at the top of the door. Just there's so many different things. It feels like he's had a learner's permit, and he really hasn't been able to give me the full control, quite like Klubnik. I think that's by design for a variety of reasons, but most importantly, just because of the nature of the game. You're up by multiple scores. The game's in hand. Just want to play it safe, get Vizina some situations, which I think that 4th and goal was supposed to be. Interesting play call. One of the themes we've seen, though, so far is they're really willing to use that size. He's a bigger quarterback than Klubnik to get him in space and try to use more designed runs, which we saw from this offense tonight with Klubnik. And that'll be something we ask Sweeney here in about 90 minutes. Is that something we would see moving forward? Obviously, that changes now with Klubnik's injury. So we'll see how that goes. But that's going to be one of the central themes of the week. And Sweeney joked with us last night. He's going to be asked this every single day until we get to next Saturday to play SMU. And so we'll see how he answers it. Obviously, he's going to be very tight-lipped about the situation, but that does become the big story. Ultimately, it looks like he would be fine to play, but maybe a little limited. So we'll see how that goes. But ultimately, I think when you're looking at this game, you're looking at this 2-game sample size and asking, what does this tell us? I'm inclined to say not much. And that's not to say Clemson's still a bad football team, because there have been signs of brilliance from this offense. I really felt like Riley called his best game on Saturday, like we had talked about earlier. So I think there's something there. Now it's going to be about sustaining it against some of the big dogs. You still have big name brands coming to town. SMU, you just saw them in Charlotte. Florida State, sure, 3 straight losses, but that's still a team that is up a tier. We're talking about ACC opponents. That's going to be a next step for this group. And then you have Duke kind of sandwiched in between, and Darren Mensah is playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So there is an elevation of talent that Clemson's going to face. And we talked about this doomsday scenario a few weeks ago when we had Chapel Fowler on about, well, what happens if Clemson doesn't make a bowl game? What happens if they, lose to UNC and the sky is really falling? Can Clemson make a bowl game? Was a question in many circles asking, do you think Clemson can get to 6 wins? Is that South Carolina game going to be a play-in for a bowl game? I think that conversation has slightly shifted, and that's also due in part to how some of the ACC competition has fared. You have a Louisville team that doesn't look as good. That's still going to be a tricky game on a Friday night. Florida State taking some shots. After the Alabama game, you thought, wow, this is a group that might be able to run the table against Miami, and they've fallen flat on their faces after a loss to Pittsburgh, Virginia, and Miami sandwiched in between that. So it really is going to come down to they've sustained that success for North Carolina. They're able to handle it against better competition, not by much. But overall, it's going to come down to this 3-game stretch will tell us a lot. I think personally, Clemson probably goes 2-1, which given the circumstances, that's going to be pretty good. You're going to get a lot of that. You're going to get that at home. You're going to have the open date. The second one, sort of as a bridge between this game against SMU on Saturday and then the start of November. But there is a path for Clemson here. And Sweeney talked about that new season. Does that new season have Clemson finishing? So they had 8 games. Did they finish 6-2? And do they finish maybe 7-5? Do they go 7-1? 8-4? That'd be pretty incredible given the start. They run the table and go 9-3, and we'll see what happens. I'm not wish casting ACC championship or playoffs, but that's an opportunity to win 10 games. And after a 1-3 start, I think a lot of Clemson fans would take that. So ultimately, there's still some concerns. I think SMU is going to be able to capitalize on a lot of chunk plays. Boston College really feasted on some play action movement. Feels like they're getting the linebackers to freeze a little bit with Sammy Brown and Wade Woodaz. Overall, a much better game, but there's still some parts where you're asking yourself, this is still a repeated habit, and we'll see how that continues to progress. But overall, and we're going to keep this a little bit shorter just because can't have David Hood to play off of. I'm gonna miss the guy. He's been a little bit absent from this podcast, so I hope you guys can tolerate the youngster taking over for a little bit. But he's having fun up northeast still, which is awesome. But guys, thank you as always for tuning into this podcast. We're gonna have a lot more coming out in the next few days. We have Dabo Sweeney tonight, so this podcast is probably gonna drop pretty close to that. We'll have a lot more. I'm gonna probably release a column very similar to what I broke down to you guys in this podcast, this quick aftermath episode. So there's a lot of fun stuff to look forward to. The fun is in the winning. Clemson's currently undefeated in October, and at the end of the day, sometimes that's what matters. Guys, thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. God bless y'all.